And the entire award-winning primetime news team.
Good evening. Romanians have gone to the polls today to elect a new president.
It's something that hasn't happened in almost 53 years, and even though official results aren't available yet, it appears interim President Ion Iliescu will lead the country. A West German polling group conducting exit polls gives Iliescu's National Salvation Front an 83% lead. Today's free elections are the result of last December's bloody overthrow of former hardline communist dictator Nicolae Ceausescu. Here in the Twin Cities, the Romanian community says Iliescu's victory could mean more bloodshed. Robin Robinson reports. Lakefront Demilitarized Zone is the name of the winning design for the new Minnesota Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Selected from more than 200 entries, the design will reflect on the Vietnam experience for 68,000 Minnesotans and the healing process they've gone through. The granite memorial will be erected in the shape of the state on the Capitol grounds in St. Paul. It will display the names and hometowns of those killed and missing in action.
Is public consciousness.
$600,000 is still needed to pay for the war memorial before construction begins this fall.
Organizers say this was also a record-breaking AIDS walk in terms of money raised. More than $190,000 was pledged to help community-based AIDS groups.
Hundreds of people hit the streets of Minneapolis and St. Paul today for another cause. They were taking part in the Great Strides Walk Against Cystic Fibrosis. Money raised by those who walked the 6-mile-long journey will go toward finding a cure for CF, the #1 genetic killer of children and young adults. And just ahead, a local landmark celebrates a birthday.
And the first pictures from the Hubble telescope are beamed to Earth.
Palestinians fear a new wave of violence after an Israeli attack in the occupied territories.
That story tops world headlines tonight. Massive rioting has broken out on the West Bank and Gaza Strip after a gunman killed 7 Palestinians in Israel. A PLO activist blames the Israeli government for creating a climate that encourages extremist acts and warns there will be more violence unless there's political change.
African National Congress leader Nelson Mandela is in Cairo, continuing his tour of the Middle East. Yesterday, Mr. Mandela was in Libya, where Muammar Gaddafi praised him for his work in bringing justice to blacks in South Africa. Events that have shaped our world for a half a century have been assembled in an incredible photo collection at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts. In Our Time is a retrospective of international events captured by 52 artists and photojournalists, all members of Magnum Photo Incorporated. The group is the most renowned in the world, covering everything from Belfast, Ireland to Tiananmen Square. Museum curators say the Magnum photos create a bridge to the outside world for us here in Minnesota. In Our Time will be on display at the Institute of Arts through August 12th. NASA scientists have been working some long hours to get the first pictures back from the Hubble Space Telescope. It may not look like much, but the view scientists say is much better than expected. The first view wasn't meant to unveil any new stars, but to calibrate the equipment. The Hubble is scheduled to undergo several more months of testing.
Must mean more to scientists than it does to us.
It's incredible when you consider what it's going to do.
Well, let's take a look at the weather. It was a nice break from the rain anyway today.
It was a great break after those 40s of yesterday and the driving rain. Looks dry for Wednesday and Thursday with highs in the 70s here in the Twin Cities.
Good. We need to dry out a little bit.
We sure do.
Thanks a lot, Ron.
A lot of people want to get out and go golfing or do something
Me
fun
too.
outside.
Cut the grass.
Oh, yeah. Up next in sports, the Minnesota Timberwolves go on the prowl for one of college basketball's top players.
Perry Williams will show us how the team was put in line for one of the prime picks come draft day.
And the entire award-winning primetime news team.
Good evening. A small victory by Ferris Alexander could leave the U.S. Attorney in an uncomfortable situation.
Alexander's adult-themed business could reopen as early as Tuesday.
Cloudy, mild, 71 to 75. So we're getting better, Jeff. We couldn't give you 3 lousy days.
Let's give him a hand.
No,
Okay.
thank you. At least we'll see some sun for
You bet.
Memorial Day picnics, it sounds like.
Should be fun.
Great.
Thanks,
Playing
Ron.
hide and seek with the sun.
Just ahead in sports, a Kentucky Derby winning trainer comes to town with a horse and some opinions.
Jim Gilliland will tell us what he said on the eve of the Lady Canterbury.
And finally tonight, if you're looking for something fun and educational for the family to do this weekend, check out the Flying Cloud Airport in Eden Prairie. There's a piece of history that's come to life just in time for Memorial Day. A P-51 Mustang roars down the runway. For a moment, the year is 1942, and the world is at war.
We don't want another war. but this just shows what happened and what we used in wars.
A visit to the Plains of Fame Air Museum is a visit to the past, but a past you can see, touch, and hear. One of the many volunteers who makes this place special is Dick McCollum.
This was the first airplane that went 400 miles an hour straight and level.
Everyone calls him Mac, and everyone admires his knowledge of these warbirds. Mac flew a Corsair like this one in the Pacific during World War II. He'll gladly tell you anything you want to know about this machine.
This one is just, well, as I say, it's seated, the pants flying.
But go ahead and ask Mac to share a few war stories, and you're asking for trouble.
I told you. We talked about the airplane.
At the age of 67, Mac is a lot like these airplanes, still flying and going strong. He teaches aerobatics and shares his knowledge gained from flying 60 types of aircraft. But he can no longer fly his first love, the Corsair, for insurance purposes. No complaints, though. Mac calls 50 years of flying a career that's been all gravy.
Said if I died and went to heaven, it'd be a lateral promotion.
The Air Museum is open through Memorial Day, and the hours are 10 until 5. It should be good weather for flying.
It sure should. Tomorrow we're going to see some improvement in our weather. It'll probably start out foggy, maybe even scattered drizzle, becoming partly sunny in the afternoon, highs of 70 to 74 with light winds. And
Award-winning prime-time news team.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Robin Robinson. Maureen Reeder has the night off. Authorities tonight are searching for a suspect in the stabbings of 3 women in Roseville.
A 16-year-old girl is dead, and 2 other young women are hospitalized with stab wounds. Susan Austin has more on the story.
The stabbings occurred here. Primetime News.
Roseville police say the suspect has a police record, but they are not releasing any further information.
The old Milwaukee Road Depot used to be the crossroads for travelers heading to the Twin Cities.
A monster of a fire is still burning aboard an oil tanker in the Gulf of Mexico tonight. A series of explosions has sent crude oil spilling from the Norwegian tanker Mega Borg. The vessel is carrying nearly 40 million gallons of oil. That's 3 times what the Exxon Valdez had when it got into trouble.
This is the crude oil, and it's...
At least 4 crew members of the Mega Borg were killed in the initial explosion yesterday. The cause of the blast is unknown. Off the Atlantic coast, trouble for a cruise ship. Hundreds of passengers on the Bermuda Star had to be evacuated after the liner slammed into some rocks near New Bedford, Massachusetts. Coast Guard officials say there was heavy fog in the area at the time of the accident. There are no reports of injuries. The Coast Guard says the cruise liner is leaking some fuel, but booms are being used to contain the spill. A near disaster in the sky over England today. The pilot of a British Airways jet was nearly sucked out of a broken cockpit window. Members of his crew saved him by grabbing his legs and holding on while the co-pilot made an emergency landing. Tonight, the captain is hospitalized with serious injuries. It's not known what caused the accident. One passenger says there was a huge bang, some smoke, and then sheer panic. Well, coming up next, voters in Czechoslovakia vote for major changes in their leadership.
And there's something fishy going on in Anoka County. Stay tuned.
More than 24,000 animal rights activists marched from the White House to the Capitol today. They hope to gain attention for 60 animal protection bills in Congress. A coordinator of the march says activists ultimately want to stop the use of animals in research, but he concedes the American public will not go along with the idea. In the meantime, they'll push for better treatment of animals. Minnesota makes no bones about its love of fishing, so it's no surprise that a few anglers took the bait and headed for Carp Fest in Coon Rapids. Believe it or not, hundreds were lured to fish on the Mississippi River, one of the carp hotspots of the country. Awards were given for the largest carp reeled in. Even a few games are lined up for the kids, like Spin the Carp. Lots of people make jokes about carp, but here are a few scaled-down facts on them. Millions of Americans eat carp, and around the world, carp is a delicacy. I always say around the world, never here.
Some other fools eat that stuff, right? No, we had a gorgeous day for fishing or anything. A little change in the weather coming up. I'll have details when we come back.
Coming up tonight on Primetime News, the superpower leaders arrive in Finland to plot strategy for resolving the Persian Gulf crisis. In Minneapolis, hundreds of people protest U.S. involvement in the Middle East. And in sports, college football returns to the Dome as the Gophers grind it out with Utah in the home opener. I'm Jeff Baillon. Those stories are just ahead along with all the day's news, plus Ron Trenda will tell us what to expect in the weather. How to deal with Iraq's Saddam Hussein. That's what these two men will try to decide during their summit in Helsinki, Finland. This story leads Primetime News.
From KMSP Television, America's #1 independent station, this is Primetime News with Jeff Baillon, Maureen Reeder, meteorologist Ron Trenda, Jim Gellerland on sports, and the entire award-winning Primetime News team.
Good evening. Maureen is off tonight. In a few hours from now, President Bush and Soviet leader Gorbachev will begin a mini-summit. The two men arrived in Finland earlier today, ready to talk about a number of issues, but foremost, the Persian Gulf crisis. We get more on the story from Charles Bierbauer, who is with the president.
In Helsinki.
Freedom came today for more Americans held hostage in Kuwait. About 130 people, mainly women and children, arrived in Jordan. They are expected to return to the States tomorrow. The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is pleased with how fast American forces have responded to the Gulf crisis. Retired General John Vesey, a Minnesota native, says the military has spent years preparing for this kind of situation, and he hopes tomorrow's superpower summit will further solidify world opposition to Saddam Hussein.
Certainly, if President Bush can convince.
General Vesey believes U.S. military presence in the Middle East is the best way to prevent further Iraqi aggression. But not everyone agrees U.S. troops belong there. This afternoon, about 200 protesters marched down Lake Street with a message. They want American forces out of the region now.
We were trying to take a message out to the people of Minneapolis, and we were taking a message to the powers that be to say we're against U.S. intervention in the Persian Gulf, and we don't see fighting and dying for the profits of big oil companies.
These protesters are afraid the Middle East will be America's next Vietnam. They don't believe Saddam Hussein is a modern-day Hitler. In fact, they say his invasion of Kuwait is no different than what the United States did to Panama.
George Bush, who not even 6 months ago invaded Panama against international law, violating territorial sovereignty.
The demonstrators marched down Lake Street to the Armed Forces Recruiting Center. There they burned an effigy of President Bush. Lake Street was closed for about 45 minutes. Minneapolis police in riot gear were standing by in case of trouble, but there was none. A surge in violence against gays has the state's Human Rights Commission on alert. Robin Robinson reports Minnesota officials and activists say bias crime laws are good, but their enforcement is not.
About a month ago,
a state task force is recording the number of hate crimes this weekend for the legislature, and if you want to report a crime, call the Human Rights Commission at 296-5665 or the Gay and Lesbian Community Action Hotline number, and that is 822-8661. With the first week of school under their belts, many parents are just settling into new, perhaps more hectic schedules. But employees for two Minnesota companies barely have to alter their routines when their kids start school. That's because they can bring their children with them to work. Maureen Reeder reports.
they are public news.
The Minneapolis School District is actively seeking more businesses that want to sponsor corporate classrooms. Just a beautiful day out there. I hope we got more of the same for tomorrow.
Well, we do have a cold front moving toward us. It will cause some changes.
There seems to be new meaning to the phrase, "Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam." Apparently an 1,800-pound buffalo is on the loose just west of Gaylord, Minnesota. The beast has managed to trample some cornfields and knock over some ceramic lawn ornaments, but all in all has been pretty harmless. Sibley County authorities are having some difficulty tracking the animal because buffalo apparently roam at night. They're hoping someone spots the elusive bison and calls in. Sun going to be a little elusive tomorrow?
Not really. We'll have a few patchy clouds mixed with some sunshine. Just the slightest chance of a brief shower, about a 20% chance. Highs of 80 to 84. Southwest winds 7 to 15.
We'll have to hope the pro season gets off better than the college one appears to be going. Vikings at Kansas City at noon.
Well, who are you picking?
Well, I'm going to take. I still think the Vikings are going to the Super Bowl this year, but I'm taking Kansas City in the opener.
Ooh. All right. Well, college football wouldn't be the great game it is without bands, cheerleaders, pom-poms, and pennant-waving fans. Photographer Luke Logan captured some of that school spirit at the Gophers pep rally today. We thought you'd enjoy watching some of the fun as we say goodnight, and thanks for being with us.
Jim Gellerland on sports, and the entire award-winning prime-time news team.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us. President Bush spoke to the Iraqi people today.
In a taped message for Iraqi television, the president warned Iraq is on the brink of war.
But he also said it's possible to bring the Gulf crisis to a peaceful end. Pam Olson has our report.
President Bush.
Since dawn to find out what caused the crash and if others were on board. An Edina girl was killed last night when she was trapped underneath a car. 6-year-old Megan Russell apparently tried to get out of a car parked on Valley View Road and Kellogg Avenue when the car began rolling backwards and crushed her. The girl was rushed to Fairview Southdale Hospital where she died a short time later. The accident is still under investigation. 2 Brooklyn Park teens are dead after they were hit by a car last night. 18-year-old Roberta Hames and 19-year-old Melissa Ann Weirman, both students at the University of Wisconsin-Stout, were struck while crossing Highway 29 near Menominee. The accident happened about 10:40 last night.
Despite concern the measles epidemic here in the Twin Cities would worsen, today 2 former hostages gave thanks to those who helped them gain freedom.
Frank Reed and Robert Polhill were on hand at a luncheon to praise supporters and gain attention for those Americans still held by terrorists in Lebanon.
Reed told his riveting story of captivity. Candy Crowley reports.
Freed after 44 months, Freinan, Washington.
East Germans go to the polls, and possibly for the last time as East Germans.
That story tops world headlines tonight. Officials say voter turnout was low for local elections. The next time East Germans go to vote, it will be probably as a unified nation. Voters are expected to eject hardline communists from district offices.
Voters in the Yugoslavian Republic of Croatia are holding a runoff election for parliament. Communists are expected to suffer a major defeat at the hands of a nationalist party calling for more autonomy for the republic.
And Czechoslovakians have waited 42 years to be able to celebrate their liberation from the Nazis. Until now, it's been illegal to honor the U.S. soldiers who freed southwestern Czechoslovakia in 1945. More than 100,000 people gathered for today's ceremonies in Pleasant.
It was a dream come true for a 92-year-old Minnesota woman. Frances Genter is still beside herself as her horse, Unbridled, took first place at the Kentucky Derby. She returned to Minnesota quietly today. Susan Austin was there.
I know that you're...
Genter owns stables in Kentucky and Florida, and she said today that she hopes her good fortune will help Canterbury Downs. Great story.
It was really great. It was great weather for the race and great weather again today.
Yeah, great weather today here across the whole upper Midwest, but even warmer stuff on the way for tomorrow, if you can handle that. Details when we come back.
Channel 9.
And finally tonight, the Guthrie Theater opened its doors to the public today and gave visitors a chance to see what it takes to put on a major show. Right now, the world-class theater is preparing for its summer Shakespeare season, and folks got the opportunity to try out the costumes and armor of 16th century England. A trilogy of the Bard's plays, Richard II, Henry IV, and King Henry V will open on June 30th.
Well, Ron is back to tell us about this good weather we're going to get.
Yeah, it's going to be very summery for tomorrow. Look for mostly sunny skies, warm temperatures, breezy, 81 to 85 for highs, winds south at 15 to 25 by afternoon.